In our first video, we discussed the government's ability to solve political conflict because it has legitimacy as a representative democracy. Let's explore that concept a little further. We understand democracy from the classic Greek definition, which says that ordinary people want to and are capable of ruling themselves. The term democracy comes from the Greek demos, meaning the people, and kratia, to rule. The type of democracy that was practiced in the ancient Greek city-state was direct democracy. In this system, all participated. Well, that is, all citizens. That meant free males. Women and slaves were excluded. These citizens would meet and make decisions as a group, and each citizen's voice was as valid as the next. And that's easy when there's a few hundred citizens who gather in the town or city square. But what happens when you have a large population spread over a large geographic area? Then direct democracy becomes chaos, and it is completely untenable in the United States, even back in the 1700s. The founders recognized that and chose instead representative or indirect democracy. In a direct democracy, the people are the government. In a representative or indirect democracy, we are still the government, but through our elected representatives. Because it's indirect, by necessity, we place a middleman in the way. Have you ever played the game telephone? The more variables or middlemen there are, the greater the likelihood that the message gets muddied or lost. So how can we ensure that the people still are the government? We do so by attempting to fulfill the three fundamental principles of representative democracy. These three fundamental principles are ideals, and our ideals are things that we find in perfection. Now, that may set us up to fail, but really think about them as aspirations. We should aspire to do these as perfectly as possible. The first of these fundamental principles is popular sovereignty. And popular sovereignty is just a fancy political science term for the people rule. In order for the people to rule, four things have to happen. First is responsiveness. This concept means that if the people rule, the government does what the people want. How does the government know what the people want? Well, that's the next element. The people must participate. And this is an issue of quality. The more people who vote, the better the quality of democracy. The better government knows what we want, the better they can respond to our wishes. Now, how do we know what we want? High-quality information and debate must be available, so a free press is essential to us to help disseminate valid information about policy and politicians to allow for that quality participation. Lastly, we have to have a decision rule to determine the winners and losers in political conflict, and that's a majority rule system. Most of our decisions are made through simple majority, which is 50% plus 1. The second fundamental principle is political equality. And this is the Revolutionary War ideal that each person carries equal weight in voting and other political decision-making. Thus, the idea of one person, one vote. Keep in mind that political equality does not include any other type of equality, not social or economic, not racial or gender, just that each vote counts the same. The third fundamental principle is political liberty. And that is the case that basic freedoms, freedom of speech, press, conscience, those necessary for the existence of political will, must be protected by the government from the government. This is the essence of our Bill of Rights. We need to be free to consent to be governed. Again, these are ideals. And not only do they help us describe what representative democracy is made of, but it helps us evaluate how we're doing with our democracy. So we can use these three fundamental principles at any point in time and look at the quality of the democracy. When we look at popular sovereignty, we can ask questions like, is the government currently responsive to citizens? Do government leaders respond to the people's will or to select groups? Who gets left out? Do the people participate? You know, the United States has among the lowest voter turnout rates among Western-style democracies. Is public debate informed and frequent? What are the key issues of elections? Is it policy or is it personality? What are the people more drawn to, and whose fault is that? Regarding political equality, we can ask if all citizens are equally advantaged in government decisions and policies, and especially the ability to participate. Prior to the 1960s civil rights movement, the political of African Americans simply wasn't there. One person, one vote didn't really stand up. Today, what levels of restrictions or limitations exist on the right to vote that vary from state to state? Third, regarding political liberty, we need to consider whether basic rights and freedoms are protected for all. Are you free to think and speak and criticize the government without retribution from the government? Do the wishes of the majority threaten minorities, any numerical minority? And what do we do when that happens? The key point here is that democracy is a practice. It's ongoing, it's developing. We need to look at it as more verb than noun. And sometimes we do that practice better, and sometimes we do it more poorly. But we can always renew the practice.